Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. I'm Tevin. I'm here with Scott as always. And I think the main thing this week that we're learning, Scott, is we're going to have to get achievements to fly again, potentially, in the new zone.
Oh no! The zone
I,
we're gonna go to like 2 times and then never again.
I don't know. They'll probably stuff the raid in there and then make me like ride around in Zareth Mortis for like 6 months before they let me finally fly
No,
again.
the Blizzard has changed, man. They don't do that anymore, except for this one.
Also, I don't know that it's an achievement. I haven't actually read the article yet, but it looks like we are going to be able to fly in the new Isle, which is cool because you and I were talking about how we might not be able to fly in the new thing, but
Yeah, for a
it's
little
small
inside
anyways.
baseball here for the folks listening at home, Tevin had a whole introduction planned where he whined about the fact that we couldn't fly in the new island, and then right before we started the podcast, a news article came out that said, "No, you can," and so it messed everything up.
Hey, it would have been good too if it wasn't for the meddling kids and Scott getting sick.
No, we would have just been wrong. It would have just been we'd say something and then been proven wrong.
Well, I don't know really what to cover for news this week, Scott. I think the most important thing for me is, well, two things. One, MDI happened, and
It
I
did happen.
unfortunately did not get to watch as much of Group A as I really wanted to, but I've got questions about the MDI. It's, let's just say, weird this time around.
It's real weird. It's real weird.
Uh, okay. So my question to you is, do you think you are going to watch Group B more because mandatory's in it, or do you think you're probably just not going to watch MDI as much?
I mean, I don't know because I didn't like watch it all last week. And it's like the first time since I've been playing this game that I just like it's not like I planned this either. It's not like I sat down and said, "Ah, the MDI is this weekend. I will not watch it." I turned it on Friday, and then I just kind of never looked at it. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know. Like I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think Echo not being in it is a big reason. I think the people I like to root for, Dorky and his band of misfits not being in it, is part of the reason. Um, I think it's like it's still like I think another thing is true is that like when it comes later in the season, it's usually the part of the season where my key pushing has started to slack a little bit because it's later in the season and I basically reached my plateau. It's so early in the season still that like I'm still playing the game. So like MDI happens on Friday. I work from home on Fridays, and so I usually have a time to sneak keys in between work on that day. And so that's what I was doing instead of watching. I was playing the game. But when MDI is late in the season, I'm usually like, I don't really feel like doing keys right now, but I'll watch people do keys. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why I was not as interested in it this time around. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I don't know. I am interested in seeing mandatory. I like watching them, so maybe, or maybe I'll just wait till the finals. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now.
I honestly hope mandatory brings back the old like Echo energy where they are the ones just doing the absolutely like insane shit that then everybody else starts doing.
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah.
really looking forward to that.
Well, I mean, it was a weird weekend. And this is just me taking this like from other sources since obviously I didn't watch much of it myself, but a lot of weirdness happened this weekend in the MDI. Like there was, I'm not totally sure I understand what exactly happened, but there was a Mist of Tierna Scythe between Perplexed and Miscount. It was the semifinals, and like Miscount won according to the feed, but like actually Perplexed had won. And what happened was I think the two observers in the key died somehow, and the deaths counted against Perplexed. And so like none of the announcers noticed this, and then so the key was finished, and it looked like missed count won because they were 30 seconds faster because of the two deaths that weren't the actual. I didn't even know observers could die. I didn't know that was possible, but apparently that's what happened, and like that's like the theme of the weekend where a lot of weird stuff happened. Like they had to restart several keys because of bugs, just things I haven't experienced watching the MDI lately. So yeah, it's very strange, very strange.
I bugs are pretty on brand for the early expansion woes so far.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess we'll just chalk it up to that, right?
Hmm, hmm.
Well, I guess do we want to talk about some 1107 stuff? We got a new zone coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really funny that after an episode where we talked about how, hey, maybe their pace of content is a little too fast, and they're releasing stuff faster than it's ready. Like the day after that happened, we got the big 1107 announcement, which has a bunch of new content in it. So they're full steam ahead still. So hooray.
I do want to caution the 1107 discussion from Scott and I. There's not a ton of information out about this. So a
No.
lot of what we're going to be doing is going off of what we have and then potentially like speculating a little bit or talking about what little there is, but don't expect like a full on breakdown of like what the new aisle thing is going to be or anything like that from us
Yeah.
during
Yeah, they
this
haven't
episode.
said, and it's still early PTR. So, I guess, are you surprised by this? Like I think we had the 10, like if you look back at Dragonflight, we had the 10.5 patch, which was a major patch, but then 10.07 is the patch that brought the Drakthir starting zone as a content. So according to that schedule, we're exactly on pace with that. But like, I didn't expect this. I thought that this iteration 10.05 was just going to be the next big patch until we got 11.1. So I was not expecting something like this to drop. I was not expecting a new zone. I was not expecting new things like this. It was quite surprising for me.
So, look, the way that I see this is I think this is on brand and it's coming from this like I don't know if this is just because like corporations have gotten a hold of video games more nowadays or what, but like what this ultimately reminds me of is it reminds me of when you and I were playing Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy was like, okay, here's your expansion. It's the same shit every time.
Hmm.
You're going to get this many dungeons. You're going to get a savage. You're going to get this. And then there's going to be a patch. And then you're going to get this stuff. And
Hmm.
it almost feels like we're doing this again with WoW, though, because it's like, okay, we had 10.0, and then we had 10.05, which was a content patch, and then we had 10.07, which was a minor content patch that brought a item that you could go get. And we're just doing that again. Like we're bringing in an island, which 10.07 was an island as well,
Yeah.
and it's bringing in a ring that you can go farm, and it's probably going to be good for some people, maybe not good for others, maybe it'll be good for everybody, who knows. And that's exactly what happened again in 10.07. And so like it feels like it's like they have these like cookie color cutters and they're like, ah, yes, this is what needs to be filled up to be our 10.07 or 11.07 patch. And then they're like, okay, good, ship it.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we kind of saw this coming in Dragonflight because they had this Drakthir starting zone island they created, and they kind of had hinted in the announcement that like this is not just going to be a starting zone. Eventually, everyone's going to get to go back there. So when they announced that 10.07 was coming and you were going to get to go to this island, and there was going to these new vaults they added, which I thought actually were fun. For a limited amount of time, I thought they got boring pretty quickly, but like the first few days of them, the first week or so of them, I thought they were fun and interesting. That all made sense. There was no island that existed as a starting zone in this game and in the War Within that they could then say we're going to go back to. So I was not expecting it. It turns out there was an island. It's just an old map they had made in BFA that they never actually used. And so they didn't have to create a bunch of new assets for this whole thing. I mean, they did a little bit, but not entirely. Um, I think the ring is the most hilarious thing in the world to me because it's just the same thing. And now, granted, we don't know the details fully about all the different stones that you have to put into the ring, about how it's acquired, how it's leveled up. We don't know, but just like the amulet, it's 3 stones. We've seen some of the effects of some of them, and they seem very similar. Into they like are kind of gimmicky and they do certain things. It's just doing the same thing over again. And here's the deal: nobody liked the amulet. Like, it was at best boring.
Hmm.
At its best, it was a DPS increase that you just didn't really notice at all. Like, I mean, maybe you notice your numbers go up, but like, it's just like there's no active, there's no like, I just never felt the procs when they procced, you know, like I just, you didn't notice it. And the amulet had this thing where it had no secondary stats on it. So if you're a class that really values those secondary stats, or, you know, especially early in the expansion, like if you're a class that really, really wants haste and you can like dump 3,000-4,000 haste onto a ring, but you have to sacrifice that because the numbers say that this special ring is better, even though you're losing the haste. It's just the effect on the rocks in it are better. You still feel the loss of haste and it still doesn't feel good. And I didn't like that. Apparently, some of these rocks do have secondary stat buffs on them. So maybe if you're one of the people that enjoy secondary stats more, you can just load them up with those. I don't know. The bottom line is, I don't think this is going to be engaging gameplay, because I think every single person that plays this game is going to type in www.wowhead.com the day the patch comes out, and they're going to read what the 3 best rocks are for their class, and they're going to socket them, and then that's all they're going to do, and that's just going to have the ring equipped until they nerf it, and then we'll all remove it and forget it ever happened, just like we did last time. It is, in my mind, some of the most boring example of iterative design I've ever seen. Like, maybe the acquisition and leveling of it will be more interesting than the amulet, maybe, but this sucks. I'm sorry, it just kind of sucks.
I can picture it now, the sad theory crafter that's sitting there like, I'm just gonna have to create this giant stupid sim script and pin it in the stupid class Discord and type out check the pins so many times so that people know how to sim this stupid fucking thing.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, I feel bad for everybody.
Yeah,
Well,
and let's not forget that like when 1007 came out, the the balancing of this thing was fucking terrible. Like, they had to buff them like crazy, and then they had to nerf them, and then like for healers, if they hadn't have nerfed them, a healer would have just worn this thing for the rest of the expansion because it was that good. And they've said in their announcement that they want this to be like a clear upgrade for everyone in the current season, and they also want it to still be pretty good leading into the next season. Like, I envision like it won't be something you upgrade until you're pretty far into your eye level advancement in season 2. But like, that's a very thin line they're trying to walk there, and I just don't have faith in their ability to do that. So like, what's going to happen is this thing's going to be buffed and nerfed like 40 times, and like everyone trying to desperately find the right stones for their thing are going to have to either start over or get frustrated multiple times as they buff it. Like, I just can see this now, and the reason I can see it now is because this whole thing already happened and it's the same thing.
well, hey, on the bright side, there's going to be some goblins.
Hooray! I've long speculated, and I'm not the only one, that the next raid is going to be a goblin raid, and it seems like part of the story of this patch is going to start to move us towards that. There's this strange rock on this island we're going to. I think it's going to be another one of those like world soul crystals that the thing in Hollow Fall is supposed to be as well. And I think that's going to eventually lead us into our goblin raid, which will not be on this island. I think it's going to be another bigger zone somewhere. But yeah, I goblins, yay! The main goblin dude got a revamp of his look. He looks different now. So
Caslo?
yeah, Gazlo has a new look. Did you not see
That's
it?
awesome.
Yeah, he's got a new model.
I haven't seen it yet. I saw the article. I haven't actually looked at the
Hmm.
model yet. Uh, Scott, I don't know what you're talking about though. They're just gonna put the new zone with the raid under the island.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's gonna be a It's gonna be a hole in the ground we're gonna go through again. There's gonna be mole people
uh,
again.
so there is one other thing, one pretty big thing that I'm excited for that got announced this last week.
No?
I know that you probably aren't quite as excited for this as I am, but Plunderstorm's coming back. And I fucking loved Plunderstorm. I am so fucking psyched to do this shit all over again, man. Oh, I'm so fucking jacked for it. What
Yeah.
about you?
So I liked Plunderstorm. I thought it was fun. I think it's most fun when you're playing with other people, and I ended up playing Plunderstorm solo a fair amount, which I thought was less fun because I mean, it's just like it's any PvP thing where like some games it's really really fun, and some games you just want to fucking kill yourself because like I think in most battle royales, like it's okay if you land and then immediately start fighting each other. The way Plunderstorm was designed, you really don't want to do that. You really want to land and have just a few moments to yourself to start collecting things. And like early engagements just annoy the shit out of you. And like so many times I'm just like, just leave me alone for 15 seconds. I'll be with you in a minute. Just let me do this over here real quick. And I felt like that happened a lot in solos and Plunderstorm, but ultimately I had a lot of fun with it. Like I got up to the max renowned and I didn't like hate my time doing it. I wasn't like pissed off at the world like so many people were.
You weren't
So
one of the
like
hate players?
no. So like yeah, I mean I think this is going to be pretty cool. I'm glad they're bringing it back. Um I'm interested to see how they iterate on it. I think that's the thing I'm most interested to see, like what's going to change with this, and what lessons are they going to take from what they learned, and I think it should be cool. So yeah, I mean, I like when they do interesting new things. I like when they experiment, and I think this was a largely successful experiment that it's good to see that they're going to bring back and iterate on.
So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this, but I am a little bit worried.
Oh
The dev who really kind of like solidified all of the stuff around Plunderstorm and ran with the idea has since left Blizzard.
yeah.
So I am a bit concerned about that, but hopefully everybody can pick it up and run with it just as well as he did.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes when you're like the originator of the idea, like once that thing has been done and that like once the system has been created and like he had to like develop the engine for it essentially within the WoW engine. Like I feel like once that's done, the iteration of the work, like yes, maybe he would have been the best person to handle it, but I think a lot of people can take that on as well. So I'm less worried about that, but I get that concern for sure.
Well, here's for hoping that it is just as good as it was last time.
Yeah, yeah. So what do
All
you think they're
right.
gonna do? Like, like what are they gonna do to change it? Are they gonna do anything? Like, I think one thing we definitely know that they're changing is um the way you get rewards, right? Um,
Hmm.
so like in the original Plunderstorm, it was just a renown track, and it works the way renown tracks work with any faction nowadays. Where at each level of renown, you get new rewards. You get up to renown 30. It's the one that had the mount, so that's what everyone needed to do. That's not what they're doing anymore, right? What they're doing now is you just get plunder, and there's a shop, and you buy stuff you want at the shop with the plunder. So will they even have renowned? I don't know. I don't know. Um, but maybe this will appease the people that like just wanted mounts and hated playing Plunderstorm, so they could just focus on mounts and then be done. I don't know. I don't know.
I was about to be really upset with you because I thought you were going exactly where I was about to go with this. But the one thing that I was going to say is, and according to like what they are changing, we do know one thing they are not changing, which is we are going back to Arathi for this.
Yes, they have said we're
Um,
back to Arathi Highlands. Yes.
that doesn't mean it's going to be the same map, right?
Right.
Like it's just going to use the Arathi like template. It very well might be the same map. But I think after talking with people who in our guild played and enjoyed Plunderstorm, I think our consensus is that's okay. As long as they do something like change the spells or something like that, like this is okay. Like you don't have to change the entire game every time you re-release it, but
Well,
change something,
they
right?
could even change stuff within the map, right? I mean, I've never played Fortnite because I'm 39 years old. But like Fortnite ran with the same map for a while, but they would have in new seasons would have events, right, where they would change certain areas of the map. Like something happened in this area, and now it's totally different. Something happened over here, and now it's totally different. I think they could easily do something like that. I mean, they're like, let's be honest, like Plunderstorm was a great time. It had its flaws, and one of the flaws is there were certain areas of the map that were just terrible. Like that you
Hmm.
just never wanted to land there at all. And if you did, you were probably not going to win because just the concentration of mobs, the concentration of items, like all the things that you would need to be successful at the game just weren't there. And so yeah, this is a great opportunity. Keep the map, but fix those places. Have some event happen there. Some fun thing that dramatically changes the landscape there or add something or do something. So yeah, I mean I my honest reaction hearing it was the same map was a little bummed because I think it would be very cool to just carry this game mode forward and seeing new zones and new maps and new things like that. I do also understand that they actually did have to do a fair amount of work on this map to get it to work for Plunderstorm, because like WoW maps have a lot of trees in them, like a lot of trees in them,
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
trees don't really work for this game mode. Like the ability to see distances and not get trapped by things is something that was important. So they had to tinker around with the map a bit. So maybe it's just going to take longer to if they want to identify a new map and do something there. But I am hopeful that they are going to keep this in keeping the same map. They're going to make changes to the map. That's what I think is going to happen.
So the other thing about the rewards that you were talking about, so we don't really know exactly how this system's going to work, right? And I think that that's fine. I think at least from what they've teased, it's okay, and maybe this is going to lessen the like, I want this transmog, so I have to play this much of the game,
Yeah.
and now you can actually choose like which rewards you get. I not even talking about that though. Like just talking about the rewards and what we have seen so far themselves. I am a bit bummed. I'm not gonna lie. Like this is the one thing that I was like really looking forward to when they released Plunderstorm the first time. Like all the rewards I thought looked very cool. It was awesome to be able to go down the like renown track and not only get like transmog and mounts and pets, but also to get titles. And right now, it just seems like it's a rehash almost entirely.
Yeah.
In the fact that like it's the same models, it's just different colors.
Yep.
It's the same pets. They're just different colors. It's the same mounts. They're just different colors. And like, I think that's fine for some things. I would just like to also see some new things. And I'm scared that instead of like Plunder Lord, we're going to be like the Grand Plunder Lord or something stupid like that. Like, I want there to be at least a meaningful title at the end. Like,
I
that
mean,
was my favorite part about doing this.
this is ultimately like the same problem we had with the new ring, right? Is that it's iterative in the most boring way possible. It's like we're just
Mhm.
doing this again and we're just going to do it again. Like yeah, I mean like how many like I the parrot mount is like really cool. I liked getting the blue parrot mount with the hat on. Like I thought that was really great. This is just going to be a purple one. And yeah, all like the plunder armor is like this is it's a purple and black variant of that now. And it's just like I understand and I'm sympathetic to devs that have limited development time and like it's a lot easier to do color variants of existing things than to make all new things. But at the same time, I agree with you. I can't help but be a little disappointed by that.
Mhm.
Like it feels like this is like the cool thing and exciting thing is like there's this all new thing we didn't see coming. Like they did a really good job surprising Plunderstorm. They did like something they've never done before, which is they tested everything internally and then launched it to us. And we like which shows a remarkable faith in their ability to test, which I didn't think existed anymore. But it actually worked okay. Obviously, there needed to be balancing of some of the weapons. It became very clear very quickly which weapons were just incredible and which ones just weren't very good. But that's fine. But it was just this new unique thing that kind of was part of the signaling from Blizzard that like this is a new World of Warcraft. We're going to be trying new things. We're going to be doing new things. We're going to be like searching for the fun in our ideas. And yeah, I can't help but just be like, oh, so we're just doing it again in every possible way. Same place,
Mhm.
same what I mean, we don't know if it's the same abilities, but let's assume same abilities, same rewards with a different tint. Yeah, I think it's completely normal to feel pretty disappointed by that.
Yeah, that's like I think the big miss with all of this. Everything else about this I'm excited for.
Yeah.
Like I think that they have leeway to make this a better iteration of Plunderstorm with the knowledge that they've had.
Yeah.
I think that they've already locked themselves in on the rewards though, and I think that's a miss. And I think that's pretty much all we can really say about it so far because we don't have a ton more information than what we
Yeah.
have said here. Like, again, we know it is Arathi, but we don't know if it's the same Arathi. We know that it's going to be Plunderstorm, but obviously we're under the assumption it's different abilities. But who knows? I mean, it very well could not be. And if that's the case, then I'm going to have a very different story to tell once this comes out because I'm going to
Yeah.
be way more disappointed. So,
Yeah, and I guess like trying to think back and be like, okay, so from a rewards perspective, like what do I want? Do I want them to design an entirely new mount for this event? And I guess the answer is like, yeah, kind of. I do. Like I, the cool thing about Plunderstorm to me, besides like from a conceptual perspective, is I feel like it was like infinitely expandable in that like this version was pirate themed, right? And it fits with the idea of the name Plunderstorm, right? Like this was a pirate themed thing. Everyone was pirates, and so all the transmogs and the mounts and everything was pirate themed. But like just because it is pirate theme in this one doesn't have to be pirate theme every time. Like I know we like
right.
pirates, everybody likes pirates, but yeah, I mean like you could just take the name and make the name conceptual and then just do whatever theme you wanted in each new season of Plunderstorm. And that would maybe limit the amount of recolors you would have to do on this rewards. And okay, let's be honest here. The mount in Plunderstorm was kind of a recolor in the first place, right? There was
Yeah. Yeah.
existing parrot mounts out there already. They added some stuff to the model, yes, but like it was never original in the first place, and now we're like getting a copy of a copy here with some of this stuff.
Yeah. So, all of this aside, and all of this to say, I think you and I are both excited for this.
Sure,
We're
yeah.
going to stay optimistic. We're going to stay excited, but we will come back to this and we will see did they do a good second iteration or should a Plunderstorm have just stayed what it was the first time and
Yeah.
not came back?
Yeah, I mean, and I am, thinking back to what you said at the beginning of the episode, the kind of Final Fantasy 14 effect that I think that game has suffered for a long time, and the players are finally getting sick of now is this kind of very textbook set in stone design and cadence of things, is that we know exactly what everything's going to be, and that allows us, yes, to work on it quickly and to get it out fast, because we don't have to come up with original ideas. We just have to come up with ideas that fit in within the frame we've created. And like it's not like WoW was not that. Like WoW has had a pretty reliable cadence of like every patch you're going to have a new world zone that has a new world quest. It's going to have a new raid. Now in Dragonflight, there's going to have new cycle dungeons. So technically, we'll have 4 of the dungeons we expect, and then 4 new dungeons. Then in the point 0.5 patch in the second season, that's when they're first going to release the mega dungeon of the season. That will have a hard mode that will not go into the Mythic Plus rotation until the third season. And just like they definitely, their cadence is definitely not as like strict and oppressive as the Final Fantasy 14 one is, but it's getting there. And I agree with you. Things like the stuff with Plunderstorm we talk about, things like with the another new island with another new ring with stones we put into it. Like these are the concerns right now. Is like I think these are interesting ideas, and it's not that I'm not excited about more content, but I am kind of very leery of the idea that okay, that we must meet the expectations for expanded cadence, and we're going to do that by just locking in our frame of design way, way, way ahead of time. So all we have to do is do this and this, check these boxes as we go.
Well, okay, so I guess let's dive into this a little bit then, since you brought it up. The new zone, in and of itself, I think it just this is what this is at this point, and like we shouldn't sugarcoat it. There's going to be a new world boss. There's
Maybe
always a new
three.
world boss with new zones. That's what I was going to say. It is a little different because there's going to be three, and it like this paired with kind of like the reputations that are going to be there is also a little different because I think there's also going to be three different reputations. One of them new, the
The
goblins.
goblin. Yeah, yeah. So there's gonna be
Yeah.
the Arathi humans. There's gonna be uh the earthen. I was I had stone people in my head. I was like, what are they called? The stone people. The earthen, and then the goblin faction. So there will be three factions there. Yep.
And then the ring, obviously. In the Okay, so this is something I want to talk about. We can circle back to what I was bringing up initially here afterwards, but I just saw this in the notes. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it bothers me. This island was intended for Battle for Azeroth, and to our best understanding, was intended to be an island expedition.
Yes.
If that is the case, island expeditions are relatively small and not like relatively small in a world of Azeroth that is inherently large, relatively small, but like
Hmm.
you should be able to run from end to end in a matter of like a couple of minutes because they're only supposed to last like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I think this is like a fifth of the size of Dornegal, this island. I think they like, I forgot, I saw it somewhere where someone like put it like an overlay of it on top of Dornegal. Um,
Dornegal meaning Isle of Dorn
yeah,
or
sorry,
like
Isle
the
of Dorn.
city?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Isle of Dorn. And so it's pretty small. Like I think when you're able to fly in it, I feel like you're gonna fly across it very, very quickly. Very quickly. So it is small. I don't think that in and of itself is a bad idea. Like if it's like if there's a lot of stuff to do in it, I don't necessarily care about the size per se.
Well, I will say small things have succeeded for them in the past.
Yeah.
Like at Mechagon, the dungeon that you have played, you didn't play in BFA, but that was a zone in BFA. The entirety of the dungeon was the entirety of the Mechagon zone.
Yeah.
And so
I've heard it's
that in and of
comparable.
itself,
I've heard it's
yeah.
comparable to the Mechagon size. Yeah.
And if that's the case, I think this could be fine. But to your point, like they need to jam shit in here
Yeah.
to make it worthwhile. Like if it is literally you go there, you do the things for the ring, there's catch up. For example, the Isles were in Dragonflight, where it's just like you fly around, you kill rares for 6 hours, and now your character's caught up in gear. I don't think that's going to do it, man. They have to do more than that here, I think.
Yeah. I I, I struggle with this because first of all, I'm remembering the conversation we had when the War Within released and how positive we were about that leveling experience and kind of the exploration of the world experience during the leveling process. I really did enjoy that at the time, and I don't want to like be a hypocrite or diminish that enjoyment at all. But I just like I look at this and I'm like, I don't see a lot here that's gonna make me like really excited to come hang out in this place. Like I will say in the island in 10.0.7, like I thought the vaults was an interesting enough idea that I was kind of excited to like dive into those vaults and like try them out. And then once I realized that they were like extremely iterative and procedurally generated, like I quickly lost interest in them. But
Mhm.
at time, like the first time you go through the vault and get deep into the vault and trying to handle your keys and all that kind of stuff, that felt exciting and cool. I don't see anything here that really makes me go, oh my god, that's so cool. um and I know that like I am not the target audience for this, right? Like there are people that their whole time in this game is the world content, and this seems like it's going to be a lot of stuff for them because to your point, like this is not just one faction, one world boss, one thing. This is three, so they've kind of artificially at least made it last longer, because you're going to be working on three different factions. My understanding is only one faction's world boss is unlockable per week in a kind of a contributing resources to a certain faction method. um I don't know how that works. Is it like limited per person? Because that would be really annoying if how would they do that outside of just it being individual? So I think it has to be individual. So I guess you just get like phased into the phase that has that world box active when you contribute enough to that one. Um, but like that doesn't really interest me because I find world bosses just painfully boring and dull. Like it's just it's nothing. It's nothing content for me. So I mean, like, I probably will have a day of fun running around this island, exploring it, seeing what hidden stuff they put here and there, experiencing the story, having the fun speculating of where the story is setting up the next patch, and like making predictions on what that's gonna do. But like that's gonna be it, and then the rest of it's gonna be powering up this mandatory ring that I'm gonna have to wear.
Yeah.
So
So let me say this. As far as the like contribution thing goes, I know that this comes off as something that is a bit concerning. But they have done this before in the past. In Legion, there was actually the Broken Isles that came out as a patch cycle thing. And what people would do is they would get stuff and they would have to contribute it to different things. And that's when we got our first iteration of the Mage Tower. And you
mm,
had to like contribute to the Mage Tower for it to be built for a specific amount of time. And
interesting.
then people could go do the Mage Tower while it was up, and then it'd go away and people would contribute to the other things. So I think that it could be successful. Now, that being said, the Broken Isles had a lot of other things that were not so great about it because, let's be honest, the only thing people really cared about was the Mage Tower. And so building the other things, like if you needed one of the other things done, they didn't get a lot of attention.
If they like bring a stealth mage tower iteration in this thing, that's gonna change my mind completely.
I would love it. I honestly, I don't think that that's something that they could do and hide. I think with data
Yeah.
mining nowadays,
No, you're
it
right.
would get data mined based off of new models or something like that. So I wouldn't get your hopes up,
Sure.
but never say never, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think you're probably right. I think the 13th delve is supposed to be this game's iteration of Mage Tower, and let me tell you, it is not.
So the other part of this patch, like all we're talking about so far is just this Siren Island, Siren Isles, whatever it's called, the new zone. But this is a whole patch. This is 11.0.7. This
Yeah.
is bringing new things as well to the table. And one of those things is something we've been asking for a while since we've been able to group cross faction, is to just be able to queue shit with our friends that are cross faction. Like, don't have to do content that is parties that you put together through the party finder, but be able to do like LFR or be able to do time walking or things like that with your cross faction people. And they said that's coming in 1107.
Yeah, but did you read the fine print?
I did not.
It's coming. Um, in that you have to be in a full group. So this is what they said when they originally announced it, was that the functionality here was this will only work if you have 5 people in your group.
I got baited. I'm so upset.
Yeah.
I legitimately got baited by that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, like this does not solve the problem of the majority of people out there. Whereas if you are hanging out with a buddy, you and your friend, one of you is Alliance, one of you is Horde, you want to do time walking together, so you group up and queue. Can't do that. Nope. It's only if there are 5 of you in a group, of a complete group queuing together. That's it.
I,
Because they don't want to force you into having to group with the enemy. So they don't want to do random queue because they don't want to force you to do it because you might still really hate that orc because you're a racist piece of shit. So they don't want to make that. It's important to them. Why not just have a fucking checkbox? Just have a box that says I'm fine grouping with the enemy. I don't care. And then voila.
I'm so disappointed reading this now.
I'm
I'm not gonna
sorry.
lie.
I'm
I was
sorry.
actually so excited. To be fair, this solves the problem for me. Because normally when we're doing LFR or we're doing time walking, we are in a group of 5 and it's one person who's on like an alt that
Yeah.
is Horde or an alt that's Alliance.
Yep.
And so this solves the problem for me personally. So this is probably good enough for me. But man, that's fucking sad.
Sorry to be the
I
bearer of
don't know
bad
what else to
news.
say about it. Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about this then. And don't go pissing my Cheerios this time, Scott. Racial updates are happening. I don't think that they're good enough for them to matter at all, but they're at least acknowledging the fact that there are racials that are just inherently the best in the entire game.
I love this game, and I think the people that make this game are very skilled and talented people. It is very clear to me that they don't understand why the racials that people use are popular at all. Because so like this is you're absolutely right. This is them acknowledging that there is a problem here, that there are overrepresented races in the game and underrepresented races in the game. And so we have to fix this. How are we going to fix this? Well, Gift of the Naru is now a 2-minute cooldown instead of 3 minutes. Voila. Everything's fixed. Change away from dwarf immediately and go Draenei. No, it's like none of this is good. Like Shadow Meld, Stoneform are like fundamentally like broken fucking abilities. Like they are just too good in almost every situation. And as long as those abilities are available as they are available, those are going to be the 2 races that people play in Mythic Plus. There will be some exceptions, like there was the big Mechanome push in the raid this time because of the escape mechanic. So people were switching to Mechanomes to help escape, but like that's it. And like you look at these things and it's like, I mean, yes, they're buffs to these abilities. They make them better. It's like, oh great, a button I never press is now a little bit better. Um, it's just like okay. I think we've talked about this on the show before. I am fully now of the opinion that racials as we know it need to go away. That the race you play is just a cosmetic choice, and if they want to keep the idea of racials in the game, you have a talent point system just like you have with everything else in the game that allows you to pick which racial you're going to get. And look, you want to lorify it? Here we go. These races have been intermingling for 20 fucking years now, and maybe they picked up some of the abilities of each other in the process of doing that. Maybe like a night elf taught a dwarf how to hide in the shadows. Maybe. There we go. Done.
So, okay. There are things that are positive about some of the other races. You and I hardly ever focus on anything that isn't Night Elf or Dwarf because
And
you and
why
I
is that?
primarily do Mythic Plus.
Uh-huh.
There are races that are good for other things in the game, specifically raid content. Night Elf and Dwarf are not very highly represented. You're looking at things like Orc and Troll and Mechanome and Gnome that are higher up represented in raid. And that's because Orc and Troll have 2 of the best racial buffs that you can give yourself. Orc also has increased pet damage, which for Demonology Warlocks, Beast Mastery Hunters, that's super fucking good. And then you have Mechanome, which just gets stronger over time as you fight a boss. And guess what you do a lot in Raid? Fight bosses for an extended period of time. And then you have Gnome, which has the CC break. Human has a CC break. So yeah, that those like if we take Orc, Troll, Gnome, Mechanome, human, dwarf, night elf, and we look at these and we say, why are people playing them? And then we look at every other fucking race in the game and we say, why aren't people playing them? I feel like it becomes pretty obvious why people are playing the ones that I just said versus the ones I didn't say, because there are things that benefit you and aren't a hindrance to press. Like, who in the fuck is pressing the earthen racial ability? They just released this race and they're like, yeah, give them an empowered ability, because fuck it, why not? They're gonna put it in their rotation.
It's so
like,
bad, dude.
it's so
I
stupid.
made an earthen paladin and it's so bad. Like, yeah, I mean, like, can we just acknowledge how fucking dumb it is that people are paying $20 to shift races because they provide such a clear fucking like that, and I know like Blizzard has a vested interest in that because it's getting them money for nothing, and so that's probably why it's never going to change. But it is so fucking stupid that a video game in 2024, a video game that, yes, once upon a time was an RPG, but is only kind of sort of an RPG anymore, has this racial bonus restriction that us crazy min-maxers have to play around and drop our credit card for so we can escape from fucking answer roots. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Everything in this game now is talent based, and the flexibility of being able to change your talents. And it's like, just either just get rid of them, just get rid of them entirely, or if you want to leave them, fundamentally change how they're selected. Give a cooldown for it, make it cost a resource. I don't even fucking care. I just think it's so stupid. They're like, I do not like playing dwarfs. I do not like playing dwarfs, and I feel like I have to be a dwarf on every one of my characters, and I don't like that. I don't like that. I
Ev-
think it's
e-
stupid. I think I should be able to be fat humans. I want all fat humans, and I can't do that.
Everybody knows you main druid, so you're not playing dwarf there. Come
Well,
on.
okay, yeah, but I'm a night elf. I'm a druid. Although now that's useless too because I can't shadow meld as a tank. Well, I could, but people wouldn't like it. Um, so I might as well switch my
You
druid
might
away
as well
now.
switch to a fat human.
Yeah, I'm gonna have an awesome stun.
Yeah, and a knockback that
Yeah,
knocks him to fucking Narnia.
it'd be great. It'd
You
be
can
great for
cast that in bear
scaling.
form, by the way.
Sweet. I'm switching. How much does it cost?
I don't know, probably like $15, something like that.
Fuck, man. Stupid. I hate it. I think they acknowledge the problem, but they're not fixing the problem. Because I'm going to switch to Worgen because Darkflight now stacks its speed bonus with other movement increasing effects. Yes.
That's
Worgen.
unironically insane
Huh?
for priests.
Sure. Whatever.
That's better. That is, ironically, everybody swapped to Drakthir on priest for more movement, and now they are coming out with another patch that's going to make Worgen a better option for movement for priest than Drakthir probably is. So I guess we'll see how it goes. I don't know. I
pretty
think that
annoyed.
you and I pretty much ran this into the ground.
If you haven't noticed, I'm pretty fucking annoyed by this because I think it's stupid, and I just think people should be able to play the race they want to play and not be pigeonholed by. And look, like there's a segment of our audience out there that's right now saying y'all are stupid. You can play whatever race you want to play. That none of y'all are doing world first shit. You don't need any of this. You can. I was like, I know, but this game is a game about min-maxing. That's what it is now. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. It's 2024. It's not 2005. People want to take every possible advantage they can get. And there is pressure. There is pressure from the community to maximize your potential in any given situation. And I think we should just get rid of this one.
Look, I'm not saying I don't make fun of paladins when I see that they're Taurens, but also I put down recalibrators regularly to turn my dwarf model into a Tauren model. So what's that say? I think that just explains it all right there.
Yeah. Just think if your Tauren could get stone form because he
I
learned it from
know.
his dwarf friend.
I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
I'd go back to being a cow.
yeah. Shouldn't you get to
Uh,
play the aesthetic you want to play in this game? Shouldn't you?
I agree. I definitely think you should. And back to something we said, I think either last week or a couple weeks ago, all races should be able to be all classes at this point. Like,
Yep.
come the fuck on.
Yep.
And just do all of this at once. Like, take away class restrictions on race, take away racials, put them in the talent panel as like a drop down selection, maybe something like that. And then just call it good. Wipe your hands clean. Good to go.
And then we can all be gnomes. That's the trick. Is I'm actually not going to do fat human. I'm just going to make everything gnomes.
I will disown you as a friend.
All right. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, let's circle back to something that we talked about at the beginning, but we haven't really said much about. Let's talk about the MDI. I think that this is probably going to take us to the end of the show because I think that you and I, while we didn't watch a ton of it, feel very strongly about this because the MDI is something that you and I watched pretty aggressively in the past. And okay, let's just call it what it is. It doesn't feel like the MDI right now, specifically because, and this might sound stupid for people who like, well, just you're just complaining to complain, but like the key level that they're picking to do these keys at just does not make sense to me in what I would consider a expression of extremely skilled, extremely talented people, and they're being put into keys that the development community and the devs essentially, I guess that's just what I'm going to call everybody in charge of that, have determined to not be high level keys. Like 12s are our wall. That is where things change. This is where we've drawn the line. We've said this week after week after week on this podcast. Why in the fuck are we making the best players in the world doing fast as hell keys do them at a 9? A fucking 9. And then they put an 11 in there. Like, they're not just gonna fucking ban it. Like, come on,
Yeah,
man.
it was so funny seeing this. There was not there were 9s, 10s, and 11s this week. I think there were 2 9s, there were 3 10s, and there were 3 11s. And like clockwork, every single time 2 of the 11s got banned. Every single time. Because of course they would. Like, who's gonna ban the 9? A 9 is a joke. You don't even have both affixes on a 9. It's yeah. I agree with this. I think it's weird, and this is the difference between the TGP and MDI, right? Is like the MDI is supposed to be lower keys, but like how fast can you do it? Crazy strats for speed. MDI or TGP is more crazy strats just to be able to time the hardest difficulty. So like, yes, MDI was always going to be lower than TGP, but I really thought, and I think we even said this going into last week, I really thought that what we were going to do in MDI was we were just going to say, okay, 12s. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be 12s. You know, it's still a low key compared to the 17s and 18s that are being timed on live right now, but it is moved into the competitive keyer range. It has that added affix. But I also said to you, if you recall, part of the MDI is them showing off their key system. And so I was wondering of like, if they just do 12s, they're cutting out this new affix they've created. And it seems to me they wouldn't want to do that. What I reasoned is they would just like add that affix back to a 12, just like a special tournament realm key. And no, they didn't go that way. Instead, they just made it so they're not ever doing any 12s. I think it's weird. I agree with you. It is very like, I'm trying to remember if MDI did 19s. Do you remember? I don't think they did.
I'm literally, that's what I've been looking up while you've been talking, is trying to see what key level they were doing.
Yeah, because I just don't think they did. Because I don't remember ever having this experience where I'm like, oh, that's like a key that I do. And of course, let's be clear here. They're doing it a billion times faster than I would ever do it, right? Like, I'm not saying that, oh, they're just doing, I do nines and they're doing a nine. Obviously, they're doing it in like 10 minutes and I do it in like 25. So, like, I'm not saying I'm as good as these people, obviously not. But what I am saying is, like, with some of the stuff, you're like barely stretching their skill. Um, and I,
Yeah.
I, my hope here is that the finals kick this up a notch. That's my hope.
So I pulled it up. These are the time trial dungeons. This isn't even what they were running. Time trial dungeons from season 3 MDI of Dragonflight. 23s.
So a 13 comparison. And I know that comparison isn't exact because the affix system is different. You have both tyrannical and fortified, and you'll have the challenger's peril affix or whatever, but still, man. But still.
I like this is what sticks out the most to me about the MDI and what makes it feel so absolutely weird this go around is it doesn't like and to people who played in Dragonflight, like a 23 for the majority of the population is not a low key. It's just not. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But like when we are talking the literal best of the best players in the world at doing dungeons quickly, a a 13 is not going to be difficult for them. And absolutely the best gear with comms and like all of the coordination and everything playing into their advantage. I think it would be significantly harder. I think the dungeons would be a lot longer, and maybe that is partially why they chose these lower key levels so that they could make the cups shorter.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, fine. But also, I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I'm not saying that they should like build their affix system and their MDI system or so this their M plus system around MDI. Like I don't think they should do that, but it does seem like the MDI specifically suffers under the new key system that we've created here. It just doesn't function as well, and I don't know how they fix that. Like it makes me more excited for TGP than ever because like we're gonna probably see some world first keys in TGP when it comes. And I think that's the format I like better. But yeah, I mean, it is just a little weird, and I would be lying if it said it didn't like hurt my excitement and desire to watch and be actively involved in it. Um, yeah, it's just it's a little strange. It's a little strange.
So the other part of this that I wanted to talk about, that we kind of touched on earlier, is uh, we've lost the Echo team, which is a part of the reason why a lot of people came back to watch the MDI. Is does Echo get another win? But do the Patriots win again? Like it that brought out a lot of viewership. We
Yeah,
lost Echo. On top of that, we don't have Dorky playing, and Dorky brought out a lot of viewership because he became a large enough streamer that he could pull crowds out to watch him.
yeah,
And Dorky's not playing. And I think that we need to go back to a question that you and I asked a couple weeks ago. Is the time commitment and the timeline that they've laid out having an MDI and TGP every single season a good idea? It almost seems like it is fundamentally hurting the MDI currently, which is something you and I predicted. We thought that this is going to happen. People are either going to choose to be world first raiders, or they're going to choose to be MDI players, or they're going to choose to be TGB players. You can't physically do all three without constantly the entire season being in some sort of competitive mindset. And that is just way too taxing to do for a 3 to 4 month period.
yeah. I think they need to revisit the rules around these competitions to curtail the amount of time that is required for practice. I mean, it's tough, right? Because on the one hand, the teams getting to practice this stuff religiously is what allows for these moments where they do like absolutely fucking crazy shit and you're just like completely blown away by the shit that they just pulled off on that key. Like that is created and forged in 8 hours of practice for 2 weeks leading up to the event, right? Like that's where that comes from. On the other hand, any system that is actively encouraging the best players to stay away from feels fundamentally broken to me. And I think that's where we're at, where we're just like, it's too much of a time commitment. There's too much going on. There's just frankly not a big enough cash reward for these streamers. I mean, $20,000 sounds like a lot, and it is a lot of money. But then you divide it 5 ways, and then you calculate in how much lost revenue the streamers would have because they're not going to be able to stream while practicing if they want to have a chance at that money. And it just becomes a time value of money equation where it just doesn't suss out into something that's worthy of your time, worthy of your money. The people that are doing it because they love it, are doing it because of the drive of competition. They're not doing it for the money. The money is a bonus for them. um, and so adding something to the effect of like just not letting you practice in tournament realm until like a set time, like you can only practice in the 3 days, the 5 days leading up to the event is the only time you can practice, to just try to like calm the amount of prep time that's for this. And it's not like people won't still practice as a team together. They'll just have to do it on live, and then they'll be bound by the rules and requirements of live, which like you can't just run into a place over and over and over again and try this pull over and over and over again and do things like that. And so it just naturally limits perhaps the amount of time you need to put into this thing. I think that is something that probably needs to be done. Um, because it would just be like, imagine the race to world first if both guilds just got 4 weeks in the raid before the raid came out, right? It's a similar thing in that, like, yeah, they would do that. It would become a requirement. It would make the race last shorter, but also like it would be an exhausting. It's the race is already an exhausting proposition, and MDI and TGP are exhausting proposition. So something needs to be done there. I don't know.
So my question that I want to bring back is, we have people who are paid to play this game, right? We have people who are either on payroll from gaming organizations,
Mhm.
or we have people who stream professionally, and that is how they make their living. The people who are streaming, which are typically the people who have a wider audience and will bring viewership to events like this, aren't seeing it as worth it to continue to do these events because of the amount of money they lose out, because they can't stream practice, for example. They
Yeah.
can't stream the actual event. I mean, now they do because they're mandatorily required to do so, but they have all of this shit on their screen because they don't want people to see their timers and stuff like that. Like, I I wonder if that is a problem. Like, I know Blizzard doesn't have infinite money, right? Like, let's just get that out of the way. As much money as they do have, it is finite, and they can't just be giving it away to everybody at all times, always, for every single event that they do. That being said, I do think prize pools need to be a little bit higher of an incentive so that we do get gaming organizations to fund the people going into these things, because that ultimately, as much as people hated on Echo, is why Echo was so good. They didn't have to stream to make their living.
Yeah.
So even though they weren't streaming, they were still getting paid to do the thing that they wanted to do and not losing any money to do it. And so you have people who are known because of the race to world first. You have people who are known because they do stream, but then they are able to carry in that audience still because they're still being paid to play the game, even when they're not streaming, even when they're not doing the race to world first, because they're backed by an esports organization. And then you have people like Dorky, who at one point was backed by Golden Guardians, probably had a salary from them. I don't know what his contract was, but now he's not. And so when he's not streaming, he's not bringing in revenue,
Yeah.
which is, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I agree fundamentally. I don't know what the actual solution is, because yes, like the honest truth is, while this is an event that you and I really enjoy, and that quite a few players of this game really enjoy, it's not that big of an event, right? It's just not.
That's
Um,
fair.
like the Race to World First doesn't have any kind of prize pools, but it's big enough to where those organizations see the value in spending a lot of money on it because they get that in returns. Um, but MDI is just not that, and I don't know if it'll ever be that. I don't know. I don't know if it's a 20-year-old game. This is a system that is incredibly popular to play, but is not as popular to watch, especially like it's sometimes very very difficult to watch these competitions. It's just like it's so tough sometimes to really fully understand what's going on. um so I just don't know if there's ever going to be enough money in it. I think the way, like, so when I think of what levers to turn here, what things to shift, it's not necessarily the finding a way of introducing more money into the system. It's finding a way to reduce the investment from the player into the thing so that the money kind of naturally becomes more worth it. Because I agree with you, like obviously you can't stream practice if you're trying to win, right? You just can't. And arguably you might not even want to, because that's probably not good content anyway. Like I'm just
Hmm.
imagining the person that tunes in are like, all right, time to watch my favorite streamer do the first pull on necrotic wake 57 times tonight until they get it down perfectly. Doesn't seem like fun content. Although I think, progging Mythic Raid is probably not very fun content either, and yet a lot of streamers do that and they seem pretty popular. So what do I know? Maybe people would love to see those practice sessions, but they can't for competitive reasons. They just can't. um so yeah, I mean, I think limiting the amount of time you're allowed to practice just seems like it would maybe partially solve the problem.
Yeah, I see where you're getting at, and I think that the really the root of all of this is exactly what you said initially. Like you and I love this event. A lot of people that we know love this event, but it widely is not that popular.
Hmm.
Um, and it's it's the same thing for like AWC. It's the same thing for TGP. But really, like when we talk about like World of Warcraft in esports content, the first thing that is going to come to pretty much anybody's mind when you ask them, like, what is the primary esport in World of Warcraft? It's going to be one of two things, right? Like, it's going to be PvP or it's going to be Race to World First.
Yeah.
Like, almost nobody is going to say the MDI, almost
Yeah.
nobody is going to say TGP. And so obviously that's probably Blizzard knows this and that's where they focus their resources. Esports organizations know this and that's where they focus their resources. So it really does come back to initially what you were saying. Um, and I don't know that it can be solved. It probably never will be. It's sad to see. It's
Yeah.
sad to know that a team spent time practicing in multiple different time zones, made time trials, and then chose not to do the event because they were losing money doing it.
Yeah.
Like, that's sad.
Yeah, I mean, and they just like they could. It's not just they were losing money, but I mean, yes, part of it, but they just couldn't make time work because a lot of them were still progging the raid, right? Like that's the other problem is raid prog was still going on for a lot of these people, and that's exactly what we predicted, wasn't it? That
So, it is the MDI too soon? Like, you were
yes,
saying it's too soon for you, but do you think widely it is just too soon?
yes, because they're trying to fit in both in this season. They're trying to fit MDI and TGP in the same season. So they had to start it earlier than they normally would. So yes, I think it's too soon.
Gotcha.
But I mean, I like part of me understands why they do that, because like the natural cadence of a World of Warcraft season is interest declines over time, and so they kind of want to start earlier to grab people earlier, right? Like the interest is still at this level, it's falling, but we're going to put the MDI right here. And so we're going to catch people that are still really heavily invested in the game. I get that. I also think it has a chance of like reinvigorating people's enjoyment of the game. Like if your interest is waning late in the season, and then you watch MDI and see this cool new tech, and you're like, ooh, can we do that? I want to try that. And you log back into the game maybe. So I don't know. There are trade offs either way. I think ultimately the choice to do both in one season probably wasn't a good one in my estimation.
So we've talked a lot about like negative things and things that feel weird about this MDI. There is one thing that I think came out of this MDI from the few matches that I have watched and the few replays that I have watched that I think is super positive, and it happens a lot of the time during season 1 MDIs. But the class representation in this MDI, I think, is the widest spread I have seen maybe ever in an MDI.
It's
There
pretty
are
good.
so many different tanks, so many different healers, so many different DPS comps that are being brought. Like, you look at keys on Raider IO and you expect to see at this point, Prop Pally and Discipline Priest as like the end all be all. Those are going to be there. But that's not what we saw. What we saw was there were people playing Demon Hunter tanks. There were people playing Prot Warrior. There were people playing Prot Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
And then for healers, there were people still playing Shaman. There were people playing Priest. There's people playing Druid. And the DPS is the same story. Like, sure, every key had a Death Knight. That's fine. But they were playing different specs of Death Knight. Sometimes they had both specs of Death Knight. Like, there were a lot of changes that happened. And I think that, like I said, this happens almost always in a season 1 MDI or a season 1 TGP, that comp is way more widely varied. But I think that this might have been the widest spread that I have seen that I can remember in season 1s of the past few expansions.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I didn't really watch much of any of it, but I did just in my perusing see a lot of different representation. And I think this goes to something we've been talking about, is that for all its problems, I think class balance in this game right now is pretty good. Um, they ultimately did a pretty good job. Now, obviously, there's some classes that are performing better, but that always happens. Um, and and so yeah, I mean, I think they've done good in that regard, and I think the MDI reflects that, and it's good to see for sure.
I also want to go back and look because I haven't, but I want to know. We're talking about classes and class balance and class representation. I want to look at the dungeons as well. Like, were the dungeons that were always banned only banned because they were 11s, or were the dungeons that were always banned the same dungeons? Because typically, when we see the MDI, teams tend to ban the same dungeons. They
Yeah.
either ban a dungeon that they didn't really practice very much, or they feel like another team had more practice than them on, or they ban a dungeon that has, way more annoying mechanics or more annoying affixes associated with it.
Or they ban
I
a dungeon that
wonder,
they have really good tech on that they're saving for the global finals.
well, that's Echo. Pretty much only Echo.
Yeah, yeah. They're not doing
uh,
that
but
anymore.
but I almost wonder, because like going into this, like you and I have talked about this before, where we felt City of Threads was just kind of a bad dungeon for speed running content. And ultimately, I still feel that way. But from what I saw, City of Threads actually did get ran a decent number of times over the weekend looking at the replays.
Yeah, because they had some sick tech for it. I mean, like we kind of talked about this when we saw the time trial, but like they pull all three of the spies at the same time. And they, while the RP is going on, are pulling like there's some really great ideas in that dungeon to kind of get rid of the most annoying parts RP wise. So I think it ended up being an interesting dungeon.
I do want to do a little bit more of a deeper analysis on this once the MDI like grand finals is over for the season,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I'm
kind
gonna
of come
try
up.
to watch the grand finals, at least the final of the finals.
I want to compile data from cup or group A, group B, and grand finals as far as like class representation, dungeon representation, because I think that that'd be interesting to have stored somewhere so that if they continue this trend of doing an MDI and a TGP every single season, this expansion, kind of comparing them against each other every set would be cool. Not going to promise I'm going to do that, but I would like to. um,
Yeah, yeah.
so, okay. I think the only other question that I have around the MDI is does does your excitement for the MDI suffer from not having Echo? We had talked about it before, and like it is kind of sad that Echo isn't in there. But now that, we were getting to a point where we really did have 2 to 3 teams that were actually competing for first place rather than one team on solid lock for first place. And unfortunately, one of those teams is no longer competing. And so we might very well be back in the position of only really having one team that's ever going to win first place again.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think I like consciously said I'm not gonna watch this today because Echo's not playing today. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't have it wasn't a factor for sure.
And the fact that there isn't like an actual competition potentially for the top spots, like,
I
is
mean,
that
is
playing
there?
into it too?
I honestly don't know. I mean, obviously, like mandatory is the favorite. I know Perplexed is a good team, though. I know Miscount is a pretty good team. I don't know. Like, I think we'd be lying if we said that these teams weren't like challenging Echo in the last competition.
I
Um,
feel like there were two, right? It was mandatory, and then what was it? But there was one team with some weird name. I want to say was another one that was up there with them. Uh, was it Dogs? Were they the ones who were up there?
wasn't it?
I don't
Gosh, I know
remember.
exactly who you're talking about. I can see the name. It just
Anyways, it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter was, we actually had 3 teams that were like pretty convincingly competing for first place. And in the past MDIs, we pretty much only had Echo. Like mandatory would kind of slip in sometimes and beat Echo and actually look like they might take games off of them, but then like never actually be able to really close it out. Um, Perplexed always looks good enough to maybe compete for the top spot, and but it was always just like pretty solidly Echo. In the last 2 MDIs, mandatory coming in, beating Echo, and actually making like pretty decisive wins over them. I don't know. It just feels weird that we were at a position to where I could finally say I'm excited that it isn't just going to be Echo winning again, and now it's just going to be potentially mandatory winning again. It's just sad.
yeah, I mean, like it's fun to watch the best people and it's fun to watch names that you know, and so like the Echo names became names that everyone kind of knew, um and so them not being there has an effect. I mean we'll see. Like I don't, obviously mandatory hasn't played yet, right? So like they're in Group B. We don't know how good they're going to be coming out of the gate. They might walk through this group like it's nothing, and then I think I would be more likely to say, "Yep, you're right. They're just the clear favorite, and it's not even going to be a competition." But we just don't know yet. So
Yeah. It is definitely just a bunch of speculation right now. But that's my biggest fear, I think, for the remaining, I guess, groups of the MDI, uh, is that because it's going to have the same problems that I had with Group A, but it's going to have that additional kind of thing tacked onto it in Group B, I think. Uh, is there anything else MDI wise that you had that you wanted to ask
nope,
or cover?
nope. I didn't watch it.
So the last thing that I did kind of want to talk about is for 1107. To my knowledge, there's not a raid, and I think that's normal. We would get 11-1 for our next raid patch. But story wise, there have been spoilers and stuff. I haven't read them. I'm not going to bring those up. But what are your predictions for kind of where we are going to go, given we have just defeated Anzarak in Nurubar Palace?
Um, I have no idea. So like, there's this thing that so the core way is this thing that we take down to get to the second zone, right? But it's also been damaged. It's damaged in the attack, and so it's supposed to go down further than it is. It's supposed to go to the heart of Azeroth. That's like where it's supposed to go. and it hasn't been doing that right now. So my guess is maybe not in this patch, but in maybe the last patch of the expansion, is that thing's going to get open up, and we're going to delve deeper and greedier. Like I said, I think the next patch is going to be a goblin one. It's going to be a goblin raid. I don't know if that's like we're going to go to like the undermine or whatever it's called, like the goblin underground homeworld or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be doing. I think it's going to have something to do with these big crystals. There's one in this new Siren Zone. There's one floating over the best zone in the game. We kind of sort of know what they are now. And I think it's going to have something to do with them. And I don't know. I don't really know, like, thinking of how this is going to lead into midnight. um I'm really not sure.
Well, I'm really sad because I was really trying to bait you there. I people have been saying it and memeing on it, but I feel like we are going to be very hard pressed to not give ourselves another potential old god esque raid. Like they're all supposed to be dead, but like Illidan was also supposed to be gone, and he came back. It
I
in
mean,
case of emergency break glass kind of scenario again.
sure, like almost certainly they're gonna do that, yeah. um
I but which old god? Like
I don't know,
that's
they'll
what
make
I've
up a
been
new
trying to
one.
figure out. What?
They'll make up a new one.
A new one?
Xalatath is an old god, actually. Surprise. Like, they can do whatever they want. Just, you didn't know about the hidden mysterious other one? It's me.
So that's kind of what I want to see happen. I know a lot of people are like so tired of doing old god content, but I feel like every time that they bring an old god out, it's just an absolute banger of a fucking raid 90% of the time.
Yeah, the fights
So
are always really cool.
I'm looking forward to that.
So yeah, sure, I'll take it. Goblins and old gods.
Goblins and old god. That's what they should call the patch. But all right, Scott, I don't have anything else for the main segment this week, and it might be a little bit of on the shorter end, but that's okay. The question that I have for this week, though, goes back to what we were talking about pretty in depth at the beginning of the episode, plunderstorm. I think personally, like I said, we love plunderstorm, but I do think plunderstorm is pretty divisive in the community. So I want to know what you guys are expecting out of plunderstorm. Are you going to do it just for transmog? Could you care less about plunderstorm? Are you going to play the absolute shit out of it like people like Max did when it first came out and become like rank 1 or whatever the hell people are going to call the new thing with plunderstorm? But definitely let me know what you're thinking about plunderstorm, what you're going to do with it, and contact us over at yellingintothevoidwow@gmail.com. YouTube is at Yelling Into the Void Wow, and Twitter is at Into the Void Wow.
And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we really encourage you to do so just to make sure you don't miss any single episode we have. There's more content coming. There always is more content coming, and we're going to have thoughts on it. So make sure you don't miss it. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else in the world that podcasts exist, which is everywhere.
Also, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting on the YouTube videos. All of that helps us get more exposure and introduces us to new people. Also, be on the lookout on YouTube or on Twitter for posts from us. Obviously, this episode's dropping a day late. I did make posts on there, so if you didn't know that was happening, subscribe to the YouTube and follow us on Twitter, because then you might know next time that we have to delay an episode a day. But until then, guys, we'll talk to you next week, but we'll be over here yelling into the void.